My family stole $150K from my college fund to give to my sister. When I confronted them, they laughed in my face. But I hired the best lawyer, and the revenge I got left them broke and homeless. I'm 17 years old. Well, technically I already turned 18 like 2 months ago, but when all this started, I was still 17. And I need to tell this story because basically my parents stole all the money my grandparents left me for college and gave it to my older sister to buy a house. And when I say stole, I'm not exaggerating. They literally took money that was legally mine and acted like they had every right in the world. I guess I should start from the beginning so it makes sense, you know? Give a little context about what my family was like before everything exploded. My paternal grandparents passed away when I was like 14. First my grandmother from cancer, and then my grandfather like 6 months later, basically from a broken heart, according to the doctors. They were incredible to me. Like, they always supported me in everything. Came to all my piano recitals, my school plays, that kind of thing. My grandmother used to tell me I was special, that I was going to do great things, and not, in that condescending way adults sometimes talk to kids, but for real, like she actually believed it. When they died, they left a will where they specifically left me a fund for my college education, like about $150,000 they had saved over years. The will was super clear. The money was for my education, period. My dad's parents were that organized. They had everything planned out. My sister Jessica is 25. She's a kindergarten teacher, and she's been my parents' favorite basically since I can remember. I don't know exactly when it started or if it was always like that, but it's super obvious. When she turned 16, they bought her a car, a new Honda Civic. When I turned 16, they told me I could use my mom's old car when she didn't need it. When Jessica graduated from college, which by the way my parents paid for completely, they threw her a huge party with like 100 people. When I graduated from high school a few months ago, we went to dinner at Olive Garden. Literally just the four of us. That kind of thing. You know what I mean? It's not that I cared that much about having a big party or whatever, but it was the constant pattern that hurt. Jessica is a good person, honestly, or at least I thought she was. She works with little kids, has a boyfriend named Brandon who works at a zoo and is super sweet. Like, she was always kind to me when we were younger. The problem was never her directly. It was how my parents treated her versus how they treated me. But anyway, let's get to the disaster. Last summer, like July or August, Jessica and Brandon were looking to buy their first house together. My parents were super excited, helping them look for properties, going with them to see houses on weekends, the whole show. I was applying to colleges, trying to decide what I wanted to study. Probably something in engineering or computer science because I was always good at math. I knew I had my grandparents' fund, so I wasn't that stressed about money. You know, like, obviously it was a huge blessing to have that and not have to worry about student loans like most of my friends. One day I came home after school, I think it was a Wednesday or Thursday, and my parents were in the living room with Jessica and Brandon, all super happy and drinking cheap champagne. My mom saw me and said, "Your sister and Brandon found the perfect house." And I was like, "Oh, cool. Congratulations." Jessica was showing me photos on her phone. A nice house in a good neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but definitely nice. And she mentioned the price was like $280,000. I thought, okay, that's a lot of money, but I guess between the two of them, they have good jobs and probably my parents are going to help them with the down payment like normal parents do. The thing is that like a week later, I was looking for some papers in my dad's study because I needed a copy of my birth certificate for one of my college applications, and I saw a folder with my name on it. Obviously, I opened it because it had my name, right? And there were all the documents from my grandparents' trust fund. But there was something weird. There was a transfer document dated like 2 weeks before, complete transfer of funds to a different account. The name on the receiving account was Jessica's. I just stood there with the paper in my hand like, this can't be real. It has to be a mistake or something. I don't understand. I read the document like 5 times trying to make sense of it, but it was pretty clear. The entire fund, the $150,000 my grandparents left me specifically for my education, had been transferred to Jessica's name. And suddenly everything clicked. The $280,000 house, the down payment of probably like $50,000 or $60,000 they needed. The perfect timing. My parents' excessive happiness. I went downstairs with the document in my hand, and my parents were having dinner like nothing. I put the paper in front of them and asked, "What is this?" And my dad, I didn't even look guilty, just like annoyed that I had found it. My mom tried the tactic of me not understanding how things worked, that Jessica needed help now and I still had time, that they were going to help me with college when the time came. And I was like, no, this money was mine. My grandparents left it specifically for me. You can't just give it to Jessica. My dad got all authoritarian and said that while I lived under his roof, they made the financial decisions for the family, and that Jessica needed the money more urgently than I did. And that, anyway, I was probably going to get scholarships because I had good grades. And the logic was so twisted I couldn't even process it. I told them I was going to sue them, that this was illegal, that the will specifically said the money was for my education, and here comes the part that still makes my blood boil. My parents literally laughed. My dad said, "Oh yeah, and with what money are you going to hire a lawyer?" And they both laughed like it was the funniest joke in the world. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed awake in my room thinking about what to do, feeling completely powerless and betrayed. My own parents had stolen from me, there's no other way to say it. And on top of that, they laughed at me when I tried to defend myself. The next morning I packed all my important stuff, clothes, laptop, documents, everything that fit in 2 suitcases and my backpack. My best friend since elementary school. I'm not going to say her name, but she and her family are incredible. I explained the situation to her, and her parents told me I could stay with them as long as I needed. When my parents got home from work that day and saw I had left, my mom called me all hysterical, asking where I was. I told her I had left the house, that I wasn't going to live with people who stole from me and laughed at me. She tried to act like I was being dramatic, that it was just money and that family was more important than money. I hung up on her and blocked my dad too. But here's where things start to change. Because I might have been young, but I wasn't stupid. I remembered that my dad had a brother, my uncle Christopher, who was a high-ranking military officer and lived in another state. My parents basically didn't talk to him. Some family drama from years ago that I never fully understood. But I remembered him from when I was a kid, and he had always been nice to me. I found his Facebook profile and sent him a long message explaining the whole situation, with photos of the documents I had photographed before leaving. My grandparents' will, the transfer document, everything. I didn't expect an immediate response. You know, he's a busy military officer, probably has more important things to do. But like 2 hours later, he called me directly. He asked me if everything I had told him was true. I said yes. I sent him more evidence by email. He was furious. Like, I could hear it in his voice trying to stay calm. He told me this was completely illegal, that my parents had committed misappropriation of trust funds, that the will was a legal document, and they had no right to redistribute the money as they pleased. He said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of this." What happened next was like watching a legal action movie, but in my own life. My uncle Christopher contacted the lawyer who had executed my grandparents' will, a guy named Matthew, who was a family friend from way back. Matthew still had all the original documents and basically told my uncle that my parents had violated the terms of the will and that we could easily sue them. My uncle, who apparently has quite a bit of money because he's high-ranking in the military and his wife also works, told me he was going to cover all legal costs, not to worry about anything. When my parents received the letter from the lawyer threatening a lawsuit, they went into total panic. My mom called me crying from a neighbor's phone because I had them blocked, saying, "I was destroying the family, how could I do this to them?" And I was like, "How could you do this to me?" My dad left voicemails yelling, then messages trying to sound reasonable, offering to pay for my college directly instead of returning the fund. I told them, through Matthew, the lawyer, that no, I wanted my money back, period. My uncle Christopher also got me a small apartment near where my best friend lived, and he paid the rent. His wife, my Aunt Sarah, who technically I only met a couple times when I was very little, would send me money for food and message me often to see how I was. They basically adopted me from a distance. You know what I mean? And I was so grateful that sometimes I would just start crying out of nowhere because after feeling so alone and betrayed, these people I barely knew were saving me. My parents were formally served with the lawsuit papers like in October, I think. The case was for misappropriation of trust funds and violation of will. Matthew explained to me that the case was super strong because we had the original will, the documents of the illegal transfer, and also my grandparents had been very specific in the language of the will about the money being exclusively for my college education. There was no legal ambiguity. virtual mediation sessions started because my uncle and aunt were in another state, and my parents didn't want this to go to public court where all their acquaintances would find out. In the first mediation session, my parents kept trying to justify themselves, saying Jessica needed the help, that I was younger and had more time to get the money from other sources, that they, as parents, had the right to make decisions for the welfare of the whole family. The mediator basically told them that legally they didn't have a leg to stand on, that the will was clear and they had violated a legal document. How desperate they got was almost sad, honestly. They offered again to pay for my college directly. Offered to give me money little by little instead of all at once. Offered to apologize publicly. My uncle, who was in the sessions by video call, made it super clear to them that I wanted the full amount back in my account, with interest, and that if they didn't accept, we were going to court where they would probably also have to pay additional damages and legal costs. The second mediation session was like a month later, desperately requested by my parents. By this point, Jessica had realized what was happening, and apparently, as I found out later, she had had a crisis because she didn't know the money came from my college fund. My parents had told her it was money they had saved to help her. So, Jessica was furious with them too, which I never expected. In the end, my parents had no choice. They agreed to return all the money, the full $150,000 plus like $3,000 in interest that had accumulated. They had to refinance their house to get the cash, and they basically ended up in a tight financial situation. But honestly, I didn't care. They made that decision. They faced the consequences. Like 2 weeks after everything was officially resolved, I got a message from Jessica. It was weird because we hadn't talked at all during this whole drama, and I didn't know what to expect. She told me she needed to talk to me, that there were things I needed to know. We met at a neutral Starbucks. Neither of us wanted to be at each other's house or my parents' house. Jessica looked terrible. Like, you could tell she had been crying a lot. She told me she never knew the money for the house down payment came from my college fund, that my parents had lied to her completely. She said that when she found out she felt sick, that she never would have accepted the money if she had known the truth. She asked me if we could try to rebuild some kind of sister relationship, that she understood if I hated her, but she wanted me to know she wasn't an accomplice in the theft, that she was a victim of our parents' lies too. And honestly, I believed her. I could see in her eyes she was being honest. And also it makes sense because Jessica was never a bad person. She was just the favorite and maybe didn't realize the level of difference in how they treated us. I told her I needed time to process everything, but that I appreciated her reaching out. I don't know if someday we'll be close again, but at least I don't hate her like I hate my parents. I got my acceptance letter to my first choice university in December, with a partial merit scholarship that covered like 40% of tuition. With the fund I recovered, I could pay for the rest without a problem and still have money left over to live comfortably. Maybe even for graduate studies eventually. My uncle and aunt flew out to help me move into the dorm in August. My parents tried to show up that day, like standing outside the dorm building as if they had the right, but campus security removed them when my uncle Christopher talked to them. I don't have an ounce of pity for them, you know what I mean? I also reached out to my maternal grandfather at some point during all this, thinking maybe he could be an ally or at least understand my side. Wrong. He basically called me an entitled brat who was destroying my family over money. I told him they had legally stolen from me, that it wasn't just a family disagreement, and he just said, parents know what's best, and that someday I was going to regret this. I haven't talked to him since. Now I'm 18. I'm in my first year of college studying software engineering. I have like $95,000 still in my account after paying for the entire first year. A small apartment near campus that I pay for myself with part of the money, and basically zero contact with my parents. Sometimes I feel guilty. Like, they're my parents after all, and part of me misses having a normal family. But then I remember how they laughed when I said I was going to sue them, how they acted like they hadn't done anything wrong. And it passes. My uncle Christopher and Aunt Sarah come visit me like once a month, take me to dinner, ask how my classes are going. They're more family to me now than my own parents ever were. Jessica messages me from time to time, casual things about her life or asking how I am. It's still weird, but we're working on it, I guess. Her parents had to move to a smaller house because they couldn't keep up with the payments on their original house after having to take out so much money to return my fund, and honestly, I don't feel anything about it. Consequences of their own actions. The truth is, I don't know if I'll ever forgive them. Maybe when I'm older and have more perspective, Or maybe never. For now, I'm focused on my education, on building my own life, on surrounding myself with people who really care about me. My grandparents left me that money because they believed in me and in my future, and I wasn't going to let my parents steal that without a fight. I learned that sometimes you have to stand up for yourself, even when it means going against your own family, and that real family isn't just the people you share blood with, but the people who support you when you need it most.